Yeah, they do. That's exactly what they say.
If someone says to me, homeopathy is placebo, the first thing I ask them is where they've got that information from.
From you! That's where we get it from. According to you, according to what you acknowledge freely, you dilute your product so much that there isn't even the remotest chance of even a single molecule of the active ingredient being in the pill. It's really the closest thing there is to a placebo on the shelf.
They usually say it with a really strong opinion. So homeopathy is rubbish, homeopathy doesn't work.
Because homeopathy is rubbish and homeopathy doesn't work.
And what you find time and again is that most people don't actually know much about homeopathy.
Yeah, we do. Let me give you the lowdown. The first principle of homeopathy is like cures like. There are a bunch of problems with that, but they end up not mattering much, so I'll focus on the second one. The second principle is that if you dilute a substance in water, the water somehow has a memory of it coming into contact with it, and that means it gains its properties somehow. The water will behave like the other chemical you dissolved into it. This is nothing more than sympathetic magic wrapped in a cloak of pseudoscience. Let's think about this. Consider a molecule of L-cysteine. This is used in homeopathic treatments for nausea, diarrhea, headache, dizziness or loss of balance, irritability, sneezing, back pain, all sorts of things. It doesn't do any of those things in real medicine, but hey, it's an incredibly complex molecule, as you can tell by its formula. It's composed of a carboxyl group bonded to a carbon with an amino group, the NH2, and another carbon attached to a thiol group. That's the SH. It does its work by a particular arrangement of electromagnetic effects that its particular arrangement of atoms has on other molecules. And it has to be in exactly that arrangement to do what it does. Now, consider a simple water molecule, H2O. How is it possible that a molecule of water could take on that gigantic and complex structure just with 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen? It can't. But it's not just that. They dilute it a lot, like way crazy much. Common dilution factors are 30C or even 150C. The C means you dilute 1 part in 100 and you do it that number of times. So a 2C solution would be 1 part in 10,000, a 3C solution would be 1 in 1 million, and so on. So, for example, 7C would be the equivalent to 1 milliliter of water diluted in the entire Atlantic Ocean. 11C would be 1 milliliter dissolved into all the water on the planet. Hit 12C, and a funny thing happens. That's a total of 1 part in 10 to the 24. That's higher than Avogadro's number, which is 6.022 times 10 to the 23. That's the number of entities per mole. Basically, this is the part where we leave behind any molecules of the original substance, and we're left with just plain water. And they keep going! A 30C solution would be way beyond this, by 36 orders of magnitude. And like I said, some of them go way beyond even that, to 150C. But if you pass 38C, you've gone beyond the equivalent of dissolving 1 molecule of your active ingredient into all the water in the observable universe. These are insane levels of dilution. The water they infuse into those sugar pills is just water, nothing else. Homeopathy is a placebo far more than any other medicine on the shelf ever could be.
People say that homeopathy is only placebo, and I tell you this is wrong. They cannot have read the literature.
Yeah, except we have.
Because if they do, they'll find a different result.
People that are of the opinion that homeopathic remedies are just placebo most probably are not aware of the current state of scientific literature.
Look, just saying it over and over again isn't gonna do you any good. Just makes you look like the hucksters you are.
I study homeopathy in laboratory, in the laboratory context, since 22 years ago. So I think I have a good experience to see the effect absolutely outside placebo. So the effects are there.
Then how come it continually and consistently fails every time someone tries a double-blinded placebo-controlled experiment?
The best evidence that we have right now really is a meta-analysis by Robert Matty of individualized homeopathy against placebo control.
Which, guess what? They didn't link to. As usual, I will. So which of us is ready to stand by our results? I'm also linking to a study in the BMJ that examined the Matthew study and found that most of their studies weren't even registered and 2/3 of the rest weren't published. They concluded, registration of public trials was infrequent. Many registered trials were not published and primary outcomes were often altered or changed. This likely affects the validity of the body of evidence of homeopathic literature and may overestimate the true treatment effect of homeopathic remedies. And a systematic review of over 1,800 studies found there was no reliable evidence from research in humans that homeopathy was effective for treating the range of health conditions considered. No good quality, well-designed studies with enough participants for a meaningful result reported either that homeopathy caused greater health improvements than placebo or caused health improvements equal to those under another treatment. For some health conditions, studies reported that homeopathy was not more effective than placebo. For other health conditions, there were poor quality studies that reported homeopathy was more effective than placebo or as effective as another treatment. However, based on their limitations, those studies were not reliable for making conclusions about whether homeopathy was effective. There are no health conditions for which there is reliable evidence that homeopathy is effective. Homeopathy should not be used to treat health conditions that are chronic, serious, or could become serious. People who choose homeopathy may put their health at risk if they reject or delay treatments for which there is good evidence for safety and effectiveness. People who are considering whether to use homeopathy should first get advice from a registered health practitioner.
And if we look at those trials, we see that homeopathy, individualized homeopathy, works. And this has been done with very rigorous methodology following the Cochrane guidelines.
None of that is true. Not one word.
It is not only placebo. This already is proved by the research which is made not only on animals or plants, but even on such a model system as isolated cell membranes.
This has nothing to do with whether or not it's a placebo, and he's only embarrassing himself by saying so. I would say he ruined his credibility, but he probably didn't have any to begin with.
There's several hundred studies of this type.
And several thousand more showing it's bogus. And your studies are always the ones with terrible methodology.
And the other part are these randomized controlled trials. And there we have evidence that homeopathy works better than placebo.
Nope. Properly blind them, and any effect goes away. And again, this is exactly what we would expect based on your own claims, as I showed. Homeopathy is not medicine. It's not a treatment. Homeopathy is nothing. Literally nothing. It's a very involved process of dissolving absolutely nothing into water, using that water with nothing else in it to infuse a sugar pill, and then selling it to you. Do not fall for it. And above all, do not let it stop you from getting real treatments from a real doctor.
So it is not consistent with the data to state that homeopathy is placebo.
It is consistent with the data, and it is consistent with you people being lying scumbags! So thanks for watching. Please hit like and subscribe, leave a comment, and go to donate.bogosity.tv to keep me doing what I do. And check out all the great content here, like this video selected just for you.